What's up, everybody? It's AT. In just one moment, we are going to talk about the shocker of the day. As Jordan Seaton, the five-star offensive tackle that just a few weeks ago committed to Colorado on national TV, he might be going somewhere else. A shocker of all shockers, even here on National Signing Day. We're going to talk about that in just one moment. Before we do, though, please do me a quick favor. Make sure to hit that little subscribe button at the bottom of the screen. Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel is blowing up. We have crossed 31,000 subscribers. I think we can easily get to 35K before the start of the new year, but we can't do it without your support. Make sure to log on in. We'll be talking college football all through December into January and beyond. With that said, let's get to the shocker of all shockers. Obviously, anybody watching this video knows Wednesday's National Signing Day. Wednesday's National Signing Day, the day that all these elite high school football players put pen to paper. And for the most part, the day went to plan. It was amazing how many guys appeared on the verge of flipping. And for the most part, none of them really did. DJ Lagway, quarterback, committed to Florida. We hear USC, Texas A&M trying to get in. He ends up at Florida. You go on and on down the list. Ryan Wingo, there was buzz he wasn't going to Texas. He ends up at Texas. Some of the Auburn guys, whatever. So we certainly had a little bit of news. But for the most part, the day pretty much went to plan, with the major exception of Jordan Seaton, the #1 offensive tackle in all of high school football. As I just mentioned, the last time we saw Jordan Seaton, he had a Final Four of Oregon, Ohio State, Bama, and Tennessee. He gets set to commit. Nobody knows quite where he's going to go, and he ends up on national TV with Skip Bayless and Michael Irvin and Keyshawn Johnson. He ends up committing to Colorado. And it was the shocker of all shockers. It was a stunner. I don't want to say none of us could believe it. I know that I couldn't. I can't speak for anybody else. But I bring it up because it happened. It was a great moment. Jordan Seaton does that statement where he says, if you're a dog, you want to come to Colorado, all of that. And I bring it up because that was, at that point, seemed like the recruitment was largely done. What was interesting, though, this is the part that I find interesting, was that even after the commitment, all the guys and girls who cover recruiting, they basically said, look, it ain't over until he signs pen to paper. And usually when a kid commits, like, it's just kind of a foregone conclusion, like he's going to end up signing with that school. But you constantly heard these rumors that this kid might take more visits, that he might consider other schools, that he might do this, that he might do that. But why this is shocking to me is for two very specific reasons. One, he actually hasn't taken any visits since Colorado. This was a big piece of news last weekend, the final weekend in which you could take visits. Jordan Seaton stayed at home. Now, there was talk about maybe Mike Loxley coming into the home, doing this, doing that. But it's shocking because in a weekend where he could have taken more visits, he decides not to. And then beyond that, and I think this is important, nobody had Maryland on anybody's radar for this kid. Now, obviously, for people who follow the recruitment, it goes without saying that he is from Maryland, began his high school football career in Maryland. He then went to IMG. But Mike Loxley is a guy that has had a relationship with this kid for about 4 or 5 years, dating back to when he was in 8th, 9th grade. And let's be blunt, part of the reason Mike Loxley was brought in for the Maryland job specifically was because he is not only an elite recruiter, but he is an elite recruiter, especially in the Maryland DMV area. So it's shocking because he didn't take any visits that we know of. And then beyond that, that it's Maryland, that they weren't on anybody's radar. But it's also not shocking because he has a relationship with this coach. And so the big question now becomes, as I record here about 5:30 Eastern time here on Wednesday, I'm just looking at the clock just to make sure, is this actually going to happen? I don't think it is quite as done as I think a lot of people maybe do. But it certainly ain't trending right for Coach Prime right now in Colorado. Now, why I don't necessarily think it's done. There's a big thing going on social media right now that there has been a crystal ball put in for Jordan Seaton for Maryland. That is factually correct. But the last that I saw, as I get set to record here, that crystal ball is not from, it's not from Steve Wiltfong. It's not from any national recruiting insider. It is from a guy who covers Maryland for 24/7 Sports. Now, that's no disrespect to this guy. I'm not saying he's not very good at his job, but that could work one of two ways. On the one hand, He could have sources inside the building that have information that nobody else on the outside has. But on the opposite side, he could also have sources that are maybe too close to the situation, that are getting a little bit ahead of themselves. And so because of it, the fact that I've only seen one person say that it's officially done. Now, everybody's been reporting on it for like 24 hours. This could happen. But the idea that it's done has only been reported by a Maryland team site. And so I'm not totally sold. I'm sure behind the scenes, Coach Prime is working his magic. I'm sure behind the scenes, Mike Loxley is working his magic. I'll be blunt. I don't ever tell a kid what's right or wrong, what they should or shouldn't do. This one doesn't really make sense to me. I know he's a hometown kid. I'm sure NIL is prominently involved. But at the same time, listen, what was the argument for not going to Colorado? For the Alabama and Ohio State and Oregon fans, what did they say? Well, you're not going to go ahead and win there, blah, 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 blah. And it remains to be seen how good Colorado is. I think they're going to be pretty good. But what I think there's a better chance of Colorado being actually pretty good next year, as opposed to Maryland in the Big Ten with Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, plus Oregon, USC, UCLA, and Washington coming. And so if the argument is don't go to Colorado because you're not going to win and you're going to end up in the portal, one that I don't necessarily agree with, I don't really know that Maryland is that strong of an option as well. I would also say I've seen some people say, well, he wants to be closer to home. I get that. If it's about family, if it's about being close to whatever, that's fine. On the flip side, though, what I would also say is this, is that it's not as though this kid hasn't been away from home for the last 2 years. He's been at IMG Academy in Florida. So this is a kid that has been used to being on his own. And it's not as though, he's never left home before. He already did it 2 years ago. So this is going to be fascinating to follow. Obviously, if it happens for Maryland, it will be a huge recruiting win. I think the big question becomes what happens if it happens for Colorado, and does it become a huge recruiting loss for them? What I would say to that is it's not good, right? I'm not going to sit here and pretend and lie and say, oh, no, nothing to worry about. No, I mean, when you can bring in a 5-star, doesn't matter if you're Florida State, Alabama, Georgia, you don't want to ever lose a 5-star. You don't ever want to lose a 5-star at a position of need. And so, no, it's not good. It wasn't good when KJ Bolden, the 5-star safety, flipped from Florida State to Georgia. That hurt Florida State. Wasn't good when Florida lost a few guys out of their recruiting class on Wednesday as well. You never want to lose talented players, especially on National Signing Day. What I would also say, though, is if you're anti-Colorado, couldn't I make the same argument that you made when he committed? Couldn't I make the same argument if he ends up decommitting? That argument is pretty straightforward. It is, if your argument when he committed was, well, it's only one player, how much impact can he really make? Well, couldn't I say the opposite? If you argued a month ago when he committed, 3 weeks ago, whatever it was, that, he's just one player. They need help here, 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 and here. If that was your argument, that's cool. I'm not going to fight you. But wouldn't that also be the argument about losing him? He's really talented. You don't want to lose him, especially when you lost another transfer, Matthew Bedford, who was committed to Colorado, ended up flipping to Oregon. So I'm not sitting here saying it's great, but I can't sit here and say that it's the worst thing in the world, because people told me it wasn't the best thing in the world when it happened. So we will see what happens. This is obviously an evolving story. Nothing is official yet. As I record here, nothing has come out from either side, either confirming 100% that he's leaving the commitment from Colorado to go to Maryland. But at the same time, there's nothing confirming that he is definitively going to Maryland as well. This is something we will absolutely monitor going into the next couple days and just as things go on. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe to the Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. New episodes, new videos every single day. College football, college basketball. Make sure to subscribe.